Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Lauren Craner. Thank you all. Thank you, Steve. My name is Lauren Craner. I'm IRI's president. As many of you know, I welcome tonight IRI's chairman, Senator John McCain, many IRI board members, ambassadors, and our special guest, President Dzurinda and Mayor Bat-Üül. Welcome to our first event marking IRI's 30th anniversary. I begin with a very sad duty that some of you know about tonight, to note the passing of one of our Institute's architects, a dear, dear friend, our Vice Chairman, Rich Williamson. Rich, who died suddenly last night in Chicago, was a stalwart advocate and leader of IRI. His advocacy on our behalf fit into a larger belief in human rights issues, including policy and legal work on the responsibility to protect doctrine. Rich traveled with IRI to some of the toughest places we work, from Afghanistan to Cambodia to Liberia. As Chairman Ed Royce said in a condolence note that he sent me this evening, with Rich's many talents and commitments to public service, he represented the best of the United States and the best of our party. Senator McCain will have more to say later, but on behalf of IRI's staff, let me just say we will miss Rich very, very much. I'd like to ask for a moment of silence to honor him this evening. Thank you. Thank you. As many of you know, Rich, who was most recently Mitt Romney's foreign policy advisor, got his start as a young man in the Reagan administration and was an early advocate of democracy assistance. IRI was founded after President Reagan's 1983 Westminster speech at the Houses of Parliament in London. And if you wait long enough, you'll see a picture over here on the screens of his appearance there. And in that speech, President Reagan gave us our mission to foster the infrastructure of democracy. We welcome tonight IRI's sister organizations in this cause, the National Endowment for Democracy, the National Democratic Institute, the Center for International Private Enterprise, the Solidarity Center, and Freedom House. Now, as many of you know, this will be my final dinner as IRI's president. Having worked at IRI twice, beginning when the Institute was only 10 years old, and with 3 children, as you can see over here, approaching college, it's time for me to do something new. I look forward to watching IRI's next president take the Institute to new heights. As I depart, people often ask me what I value most from my 2 decades in democracy assistance. At the top of the list are the people we get to work with. And by that, in part, of course, I mean IRI's remarkably idealistic, talented staff. I'm particularly proud that over the last 9 years, we've attracted so many staff from new democracies abroad, and they are with you on these tables tonight. But in talking about the people we work with, many of you have heard me say that while we can never meet George Washington or Thomas Jefferson or John Adams, we've been able to work with their like overseas. Last week saw the passing of a giant among them, Nelson Mandela, a man who spent 27 years in prison, yet emerged to negotiate the end of apartheid with his jailers. He then had the grace to hand back authority after 1 term in power. Those of you who attended last year's dinner, held jointly with NDI, will remember meeting a remarkable founding mother, Aung San Suu Kyi. IRI has worked to advance democracy in Burma for over 2 decades. Last year, IRI's Women's Democracy Network hosted a lunch for another heroine, if less well-known, Tunisia's Sihem Bensedrine. Sihem, who I first met in 2004, stands about 5 feet, but she stood tall in opposing Tunisia's dictator, Ben Ali. There are many other heroes IRI has worked with to advance freedom, from Bulgaria's Peter Stoyanov to El Salvador's Alfredo Cristiani, to Liberia's Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Kyrgyzstan's Rosa Otunbayeva, and Romania's Emil Constantinescu. And poetically, many of them are now passing on through IRI what they learned about building freedom to people who will soon be known by the world as heroes in places like Cuba, Belarus, and Zimbabwe. Tonight, you're going to meet two of the heroes we've been honored to work with, Slovak President Mikuláš Dzurinda and Mongolia Mayor Bat-Üül. They'll be formally introduced later by Senator McCain, but I can tell you that both remain close friends of IRI, and both are already passing on the lessons they've learned to people still struggling to break their change. It has been the privilege of my life to work in the company of such heroes. Let me just close by thanking all of you for the help you've given to IRI's cause over the years. IRI's objective is to put ourselves out of business, to see democracy around the world, but in the years that remain until we reach our objective, I hope you'll be as good to IRI's future presidents as you have been to me. We'll be back around 7:50 to begin our formal program. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Knowing after all these years how fond Senator McCain is of long-winded, flowery introductions, I got mine down to 45 words. John McCain began his career on the Enterprise off Cuba during the missile crisis, spent over 5 tough years in Hanoi, and has been since 1993 a Republican iconoclast, maverick, and central voice on national security. His life story exemplifies the lessons of freedom taught by IRI. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator John McCain.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for that kind introduction, and thank you for not mentioning that I lost running for president. I appreciate that. I've often said after I lost, I slept like a baby. Sleep 2 hours, wake up and cry, sleep 2 hours, wake up. And by the way, a lot of you have heard the line I've used several hundred times. You know that I'm so happy to get a warm reception since the approval rating of Congress, as you may have noticed, is down to 9%. And I often said that we're down to paid staff and blood relatives. Well, as some of you know, my mother is 101 years old, and she called me the other day, and we're now down to paid staffers. So, and I thank you, Lauren, and I thank you for the many years of dedicated service and leadership that you've given IRI. And as you move on from the presidency of this institution we all love so much, you can be so confident in the knowledge that IRI is stronger, more relevant, and more capable thanks to you, Lauren. Lauren may not have mentioned that he joined my staff when I was a member of Congress in the year 1983. And that was the highlight of his career, I'm sure. You know, tonight we all have a heavy heart, and I'm sure that all of you know, as Lauren mentioned, Rich Williamson. You know I speak for my fellow members of the board and all the men and women of IRI when I say that our thoughts tonight are with Rich's family, his wife Jane, and their children Ricky, Craig, and Lisa. Tonight's dinner was always intended to be a moment for reflection, but at this time of grief and mourning, we also find ourselves taking stock of the larger things, the things that matter most. Our thoughts turn to the many ways that Rich touched our lives and enriched to our common endeavors. And it is times like this that we ask ourselves how best we can carry on the memory and good work of our departed friend, and how we can give our lives a meaning that is greater than just our own self-interested pursuits, how we can do the things that really matter. Because that's how it was with Rich. In addition to his indispensable work on behalf of IRI, its people, and its global mission, he was a diplomat, an author, a professor, an attorney, a leader, and a friend of so many of us. He served 3 presidents in high-level positions in the White House, the State Department, and the United Nations, where he worked to seek a lasting peace in Sudan, to prepare our government and the community of nations to respond better to mass atrocities and genocide, and so many other worthy pursuits. Rich was a top advisor to Governor Romney during his bid for the presidency last year, and he worked tirelessly to get me elected to the same office on not one but two occasions, a lapse of judgment on Rich's part, for which I will always be enormously grateful. That's how it was with Rich. He fought the big fights, he did what mattered most, he left his mark and left our world, and all of us in it, better off for his service. His intellect, his compassion, and his unwavering belief that in the final accounting, the central idea that should guide America's role in the world is this: our interests are our values, and our values are our interests. Yes, the realities of the moment may complicate our best designs, but in the long run, we are as simple as that. For America, our interests are our values, and our values are our interests. This vision is what first drew Rich to IRI many years ago. It was a clarion call on behalf of America's values that best expressed in so many things often are. As President Reagan said, "Let us now begin," he declared in his famous address to the British Parliament in 1982. Reagan said, quote, "A major effort to secure the best, a crusade for freedom that will engage the faith and fortitude of the next generation for the sake of peace and justice." Reagan said, "Let us move toward a world in which all people are at last free to demonstrate and determine their own destiny." This was the vision that gave life to the IRI, as well as its sister organizations, the National Democratic Institute and the National Endowment for Democracy 30 years ago. It was this vision that first brought IRI to the aid of political and civil society leaders in Latin America as a wave of democratization began sweeping our hemisphere in the 1980s. It was this vision that inspired IRI's efforts on behalf of those who longed for freedom behind the Iron Curtain and who struggled after its fall to build a Europe whole, free, and at peace. And it was the same vision of democracy, opportunity, human rights, and rule of law that has sustained IRI as it has expanded its support for these values into Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. The individuals we honor tonight are two of the finest exemplars of everything that IRI stands for and most we can ever hope for in our partners. Prime Minister Dzurinda served as Prime Minister of Slovakia from 1998 to 2006. Under his leadership, Slovakia consolidated its democracy, joined the European Union and the NATO, and experienced significant economic growth. He entered politics as one of the founding members of the Christian Democratic Movement, which competed in the first democratic elections in Slovakia in 1990. He served in numerous ministerial posts during the 1990s before becoming Prime Minister after his Slovak Democratic Coalition won the elections in 1998. He was elected Prime Minister again in 2002. He was his nation's first foreign minister from 2010 to 2012, and he currently serves as a member of Parliament. Prime Minister Dzurinda has distinguished himself in his country's journey toward democracy, and we are honored to have him here tonight. Welcome, sir. Mayor Bat-Üül was appointed Mayor of Ulaanbaatar by its city council in August of 2012. As a leader in Mongolia's democratic movement, he helped organize the first group that spoke out against Mongolia's ruling party in December 1989, a crime at the time for which he and other members of his group were arrested. Upon regaining his freedom, Mayor Bat-Üül became one of the leaders of this country's democratic revolutions in 1990. He He served as chairman of the Democratic Party from 1990 to 1992. I take it that's not like our Democratic Party. Anyway. And as general secretary from 1992 to 1996. He's been a key legislator in Mongolia's parliament for many years, and in 2009, he was awarded the title of Hero of Mongolia on the occasion of the 20th anniversary of its democratic revolution. Mayor Bat-Üül has devoted his life to promoting and strengthening democracy in Mongolia, and we are honored that he could be here with us tonight. Welcome, sir. What is so special about Prime Minister Dzurinda and Mayor Bat-Üül is why they are such an inspiration to all of us, is that they have not only succeeded in winning elections or leading democratic revolutions, but they've also succeeded in the difficult and often unglamorous work of democratic governance. This is the work that rarely makes the headlines and at times can be uninspiring, tedious, and even downright frustrating. But it is the essential work of building political parties, drafting legislation, institutionalizing democratic principles, and so many of the other essential tasks of governance that is what sets apart the democratic success stories such as Slovakia and Mongolia. As we look around the world today, it is clear that not only is IRI stronger than ever after 30 years, but its mission and its work have never been more important and necessary. From the ongoing struggle for democracy and the rule of law for which hundreds of thousands of brave Ukrainians are in the streets of Kiev as we speak, to the unfinished revolutions in places like Libya and Tunisia and Yemen, to the more difficult challenges in places like Russia and Egypt, where authoritarian regimes are striking back and democracy and its champions are in retreat. Courageous men and women are looking to the United States and to organizations like IRI to provide leadership. This is a call that we must answer. Of America, Rich Williamson once said, "We are defined by our values and our own fidelity to those values and our willingness to let those values animate our foreign policy, not only exhibit our better selves, but provide hope and support for those denied freedom." I know Rich was intensely proud of everything that IRI has achieved in 30 years, and I know how full of hope and excitement he was about the contributions that IRI will make in the next chapter of freedom in our world. This next chapter will be written in due course, and I'm confident that IRI will play a decisive role. That is what Rich worked so hard to ensure. That is the goal to which he would want all of us to recommit ourselves tonight. And when that day comes, I only wish that our friend Rich could have been here to share its joy with us. Thank you very much. Now may I ask our two honorees to come to the stage and make welcoming remarks, and if our honorees come. Would you rather wait until the president is finished and then we'll have.
Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank Senator McCain for his warm words. I would like to say that I am hugely honored and privileged being introduced by so great man writing so incredible biography by his life. Thank you very much, sir. So, Mr. President of IRI, Mr. Craner, dear Senator, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. The current year quickly fades away. For Slovakia, it marked 20 years of its existence as an independent sovereign state. Next year, together with a number of other Central European countries, we will remind ourselves of other anniversaries. 10 years ago, 7 countries joined NATO, and 10 countries joined the European Union. All these anniversaries mark our homecoming, our return to the cradle of our civilization. Slovakia wrote an important chapter of its history. The beginnings were not easy. 5 years after our independence, we faltered. We toyed with our reputation and found ourselves in serious economic difficulties and international political isolation. In 1997, Madeleine Albright labeled Slovakia as a black hole of Europe. But we followed the light and turned things around. It was only 7 years later, in 2004, after the political changes in 1998 and the subsequent deep political and economic structural reforms, that Doing Business, a World Bank report, named Slovakia the world's top reformer. Structural reforms in Slovakia had been really vital and profound. 20 years ago, Slovakia was a global power in the number of tanks produced per capita. Today, Slovakia is a global power in the production of passenger cars per capita. Thanks to the introduction of a flat tax rate and many other reforms, foreign investors, including the American companies, found its way to Slovakia. And today, my country is the only country from the Visegrad 4 which was able to meet the strict conditions and to introduce the single European currency. Slovakia, a country that once relied on assistance from the international community, has become a country that helps others and increasingly assumes its share of responsibility on development around the world. Our troops served alongside the US troops in Kosovo. Slovakia was part of the military coalition in Iraq. Our troops are serving with the US troops in Afghanistan. My country is an integral part of peacekeeping missions worldwide. We participate in international development cooperation and assistance. Dear friends, such a positive development, and not only in Slovakia, but also in other countries of Central and Eastern Europe, could happen only with the assistance of the international community, of which the United States of America is an integral part. I want to express my heartfelt thanks for this help. We are grateful to the United States and to their political leaders, but we are also grateful to the International Republican Institute, which is present and active not only in Slovakia, but also in other young democracies from the very outset of political changes. Thank you for your moral, political, and material assistance and cooperation. Dear friends, shortly before the fall of the Berlin Wall, President Bush Sr. stated his dream, his vision, to make Europe whole and free. As he said, the foundation of lasting security comes not from tanks, troops, or barbed wire. It is built on shared values and agreements that link free peoples. Today, much of that vision has come true, but the work is not yet completed. I am very pleased that due to the close cooperation and assistance of the IRI, I could recently act in Serbia as an advisor to the Deputy Prime Minister for European integration. Serbia, also thanks to our working together, has made significant progress and courageous changes over the past year. With these changes, Serbia has become a candidate country for EU membership and was invited to start accession negotiations. The second country where I would like to develop cooperation with the IRI is Ukraine. It is a country with a great potential but also with huge problems, as we see just in these moments, economic and political. It reminds me of Slovakia 15, 20 years ago. President Yanukovych in Kiev has the same beliefs that my predecessor had in Bratislava 20 years ago. That at home he can do what he wants. And also that with such an approach, he can court cooperation on the way to the European Club. Early in November of this year, I visited Kiev to meet with the opposition leader, Vitaly Klitschko. The boxing ring fighter has become a freedom fighter. Klitschko wants to change Ukraine. He wants to modernize and integrate it into the Western world. He wants to fight corruption and to introduce transparency in public life. He knows that there is only one path, the path of reform. Vitaly Klitschko, by the way, reminds me of myself 15 years ago. I understand your smile because he's a little taller, and I'm afraid that he's also a little more powerful. Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, we live in turbulent times, as if the period of prosperity was exhausted, and we are now looking for someone to pay the bill. The bill for the past prosperity. For some time it seemed that the answer to the challenges of the 21st century would be globalization. Technological development and significant social movements in all corners of the world led to rapid globalization in which the world shrinks and flattens out. But many people feel that they are losing their identity, their roots, their traditions. Especially the young are nowadays in difficulty to find a job and a safe anchorage. They are looking for answers to how not to lose themselves, how not to give up in this global world. As if the world were today characterized in its entirety by globalization and the anxiety of the individual. The number of people who blame politics for their own problems is dangerously increasing. Many point their finger at the so-called standard political parties. Elections are becoming manifestation of revolt and not of choice. Radicals, extremists, and populists are gaining ground. The challenge of the free world is to offer answers to these developments. The answer to the current difficulties cannot be extremism or chaos, as suggested by adventurers. The response to globalization cannot be collectivism, as suggested by many, even reasonable people. We have rich experience with collectivism in Central Europe. We all had the same, but the same was very little. The challenge of current politics is to protect ourselves and to promote individual freedom, individual rights, but also individual responsibility. The right of individual opportunity, individual assertion of oneself, individual dignity. Globalization and the expansion of the zone of freedom and democracy have led to an unprecedented migration of people. Even in Europe, we believed in the vision of multiculturalism. Today, however, it often seems that this project is failing. In countries where ethnic problems didn't exist, they are becoming evident. Instead of searching for and making use of individual opportunities, immigrants are joining together into units to press collectively for their interests. Again, I see the cause of this disturbing trend in the advocacy of a collectivist approach rather than individual one. As we reject collective guilt, we should also reject collective rights, including the collective rights of those citizens in individual countries who belong to a nationality different to that of the host country. I believe that shifting the emphasis to individual civil rights from collective rights would contribute to solving problems not only in Bosnia and Herzegovina and entire Western Balkans, but maybe also in the Middle East and maybe also in other parts of the world. That being said, I think that the project of multiculturalism has not failed. It is us, the politicians, who are failing. Multiculturalism is actually a necessity without which the world wouldn't be able to evolve calmly and peacefully. Naturally, a major global challenge is to tackle the economic and financial crisis. We are struggling with it in Europe, likewise in America. Leaders offer different recipes. Some offer a 75% rate of income tax for the rich. Others overlap all that with new one or the introduction of common currency. Ultimately, however, the dispute results in a dilemma: to save or to spend. I am on the side of those who say to save. Why? Because my personal experience says that reduction of public spending can lead to private activities. I am for promoting private investment. Accordingly, I am for low labor taxation, for a flexible labor code, multi-pillar pension scheme, and for a competitive environment also in healthcare. Ladies and gentlemen, and undeniably sizable, perhaps the dominant challenge to the free world is the challenge of security. I don't want to spend a lot of time to speak about the main security challenges. What I would like to emphasize is the necessity to stick to the transatlantic alliance, to stick to this alliance and to do our best to develop this community of shared values. Dear friends, it is not possible to talk about all the challenges facing the world today. We do not know the challenges facing the future world, but we know the tools, the approaches that allow us to find true and sustainable answers to the most complex questions. They are embedded in the values of our Western world, which are also, I believe, universal values. I feel that we must unconditionally return to these values and that they must be adhered to, as did Helmut Kohl, Margaret Thatcher, and Ronald Reagan. Instead of quick solutions and easier ways of reaching them, we should strive for sustainable solutions. Dear Mr. President Craner, dear Lorne, dear Mr. Senator, ladies and gentlemen, on another occasion I said that it is an uplifting feeling to belong to the family, especially to the family of IRI, the family of American Republicans. As a young man, I listened open-mouthed to the speeches of Ronald Reagan, even though I didn't understand English. No motivation during communism to learn languages. But I read excellently his disarming smile at a news conference with Gorbachev in Reykjavik. Many years later, as the Prime Minister of a free country, I stepped deeply moved into that discreet wooden house in Reykjavik and drank up the atmosphere in which Gorbachev apparently realized who will win the Cold War. Well, as a politician, I dreamt for years that one day even Slovakia would welcome a United States president. I couldn't suspect that it would be me who would accompany him onto the stage and introduce him. This dream was fulfilled in February 2005, when our guest was President of the United States, George Walker Bush. Today, I feel very, very strongly that I belong to this family, to this noble company. I want to wholeheartedly thank you all for this special and unique feeling. Mr. President, dear Lorne, thank you and the entire IRI for your commitment and assistance to Slovakia and to other post-communist countries. Thank you for your commitment to freedom in the world. Thank you also for our enduring friendship. I wish you good health, lots of continuing and meaningful activities, and personal well-being. May God bless the United States, Slovakia, and all of us. Thank you.
Юуны өмнөх үг хэлсэн үсгээ шууд англиар ярьж чадахгүй орчуулагчаар дамжуулж байгаадаа хүлцэл үчээ. Уг нь аяра арчил үний эрхийн сургалтаас гадна бас англи хэлний сургалт явуулсан бол би одоо шууд англиар ярьж явах байсан юм ба.
I would like to apologize for not speaking in English. If IRI had an English training course other than democracy, I would be able to speak in English right now.
Эрхэмд зочд төлөөлөгч ноёд хатагтай анд нөхдүүдээ.
Dear guests, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends,
Та бүхэнтэй аяра байгуулагчны 30 жилийн маан арга хэмжээндээр уулзаж баяр хүрэх хоор завшаан тохиосонд баяртай байна.
it is a great honor and privilege for me to be amongst you and have this rare opportunity to congratulate International Republican Institute on its 30th anniversary in person.
Гэвч би ноён Ричард Уильямсны гэр бүлийнхэнд гүн эмгэнэл илэрхийлэн үгээ эхэлж байна. Түүнээс удаан денхийг байгуулахад оруулсан хувь нэмэр дэлхийн арчлыг хөгжүүлэхэд оруулсан хувь нэмэр хязгаарч мартагдахгүй зүйл байх болно.
I would like to start my speech expressing my deepest condolences to Mr. Richard Williams' family. And we will never forget what his contribution towards peacekeeping in Sudan and all other important works he had done.
Монгол улс дарангуйлын дэглэмээс арчилсан нийгэм рүү тайван замаар шилжих амаргүй зорилтыг Монгол шиг 2 сая орчим хүн амтай улсын хувьд бүрж хэцүү байсан. Тэр тусмаа Баавгай аймаг зөвлөлт толгойд тулслуу хэмээх хятад ард улсын дунд байрлах жижиг Монгол улсыг тайван замаар арчлыг байгуулах гэхэд хэн ч итгээгүй. Гэвч тэдгээр хүмүүс буруу байсныг бид харуулсан. Үүнийг Америкийн нэгдсэн улсын конгрессийн тогтоолд дэлхийд сайхан үлгэр жишээ болох хэмээн дурдсан хүний эрхэнд дурдсан байдаг юм аа. Хүний эрхэн жаргахаар өөрийн эрхээр зов хэмээн эрхчлөөний нухаршгүй итгэл үнэмшилтэй Монголын ард түмнээ би энэ хүндтэй эндгэр дээрээс өргөмжлөн дэдлэх завшаан тохиож байгаадаа маш их баяртай байна.
Mongolia's transformation from a totalitarian state to a democratic state wasn't easy, especially a small country like Mongolia with less than 2 million people. Mongolia is in a tough neighborhood, sandwiched between a Russian bear and a Chinese dragon. Many seemed almost impossible to become a democratic state, avoiding all violence, advocating political change in a peaceful way. However, we proved them wrong. Mongolia's transformation to a democratic, free market economy has been praised by the United States Congress as a model transformation for the rest of the world. I am much honored to praise my fellow Mongolians who believe that, as you say in the United States, live free or die.
Монголын ард түмэн ардчилсан хувьсгалыг тайван замаар хийхэд IRI хэмээх бидэнд маш сайн хамтрагч байсан. Коммунист дэглэмийг халж хүний эрх хуулийг дээдлсэн сонгуульд итгэсэн арчлыг байгуулж зөвжүүлэхэд IRI-гийн баг Улаанбаатарт ирж тусалсан юм аа.
As we have made our way through our democratic journey, we have had one companion at our side, and that is IRI. Just after we have thrown off the yoke of communist oppression, a team of IRI officials arrived in Ulaanbaatar to help us plan and build a democratic society based on human rights, the rule of law, and the integrity of the ballot box.
Энэ дашрамд Америкийн нэгдсэн улсын төрийн нарийн тэр үед Америкийн нэгдсэн улсын төрийн нарийн бичгийн дарга байсан Джеймс Бейкер угаад Монгол орны ардчил шилжилтэн тайван замаар хүч хэрглэлгүй явахад дэмжлэг үзүүлж онцгой хичээл зүтгэн гаргаж байсанд нь талархлаа илэрхийлэхийг хүсэж байна. Ардчлалаа эрхэмлдэг Монгол хүн бүр Джеймс Бейкерт баярлж талархаж байдгийг бас хэлье. Монголын ардчлалыг байнга тууштай дэмжиж явдагт сенатор Джон Маккейнгод талархал илэрхийлье. Та Монгол зочилсон хамгийн анхны сенаторуудын нэг байсан баярлж явдаг.
Taking this opportunity, I would like to especially thank Mr. James Baker, Secretary of State at the time, for his invaluable support given to us to reach our goal through a vibrant, peaceful political process. Every Mongolian who appreciates democracy is thankful to Mr. James Baker. I would also like to thank Senator John McCain for his continued support and assistance for further development of our democracy. Senator McCain, you were one of the first senators to visit Mongolia.
IRI-гийн нэрээр талархлаа илэрхийлж би бас хоёр зүйл хэлхийг хүсэж байгаа юм. Улс төр орон нутгаас эхэлдэг болохыг ардчилсан хүчнийхэнд ойлгуулж чадсанд та бүхэнд талархаж байгаагаа нэгдүгээр хэлье. Орон нутагт ард түмнийхээ дэргэд очиж чадсан ардчилсан хөдөлгөөнийг хүчрхэгжиж амжилтанд хүрэх боломжтой болдгийг бид харсан юм аа.
There are two other things I would like to thank IRI. First, thank you for your assistance that now the democratic movement understands that politics and good governance start from the local level. All politics are local. We experienced it ourselves that if we reach out to our people at local levels, we can gain their support and together we can thrive.
Өнөөдөр ардчилсан нам ерөнхийлөгчийн болон парламентын сонгуульд ялдаг болсон. Эдгээр сонгуулиуд маш өрсөлдөөнтэй болсон. Улс төрийн намууд орон нутгийн хэмжээнд эрхтэйг шоролцож шударгаар өрсөлдсөнийг дуулгахад таатай байна. Энэ бол улс төрийн орон нутгад сонгодог хэлбэр байсан юм аа. Хайрын ажлаа амжилттай гүйцэтгэсэн гэдгийг хэлье.
Today, Mongolian Democratic Party has won the parliamentary and presidential elections. These were very competitive elections. I'm proud to say that these elections featured all political parties fighting at the local levels to engage voters for their support. It was grassroots politics at its best. IRI, job done well.
Ардчил эргэлт буцалтгүй амжилтанд хүрэхэд олон түмэнд ардчлалын тухай боловсролыг олох хэрэгцээг байлаа. Ардчлал нь дээрээс бас нийтийг амарсан тэдний оролцоо өгөх үйл ажиллагаа юм гэдгийг хүмүүст ойлгуулах нь их чухал байсан юм аа. Энэ ажлыг хийж гүйцэтгэхэд IRI-гийн ажилтнууд тухайлбал Майк Мичел, Шеннон Келлог, Кирстен Эдмондсон, Лорен Чилдрес, Джефф Крауз, Фредерик Лоуренс, Билл Инглин нарын олон хүн манай одоо цахилгаан шатхуун тасарсан хөдөө нутгийг амаргүй бэрхшээлийг үл шантран сургууль ажиллаж байсанд гүн талархлаа илэрхийлэхийг хүсэж байна. IRI-гийнхантай хамтдаа явж Монголын тал нутагт ардчлалыг түгээн дэлгэрүүлэхэд зөвлөж явсан миний найз Од мөн одоо Стив Сандерс нарт энэ дэшин талархлаа илэрхийлье.
Second, in the early days, educating the general public about what democracy is all about was very important. People began to understand that it wasn't about top-down governance. It was about bottom-up engagement advocacy. It is about politicians taking orders from. It wasn't about politicians taking orders from their constituencies, not about constituencies taking orders from politicians. During the economic hardship in Mongolia, with no gas for cars and no electricity for homes, there were many IRI staff like Mike Mitchell, Kirsten Edmondson, Lauren Childers, Jeff Cross, Frederick Lawrence, Bill Ingley, and many others worked deep in the countryside. The list is too long to name, but they all have my affection. I would like to thank you for your hard work and dedication. It is also my pleasure to thank Mr. Odd and Mr. Steve Saunders, who have provided invaluable guidance and advice for over 2 decades.
Ингээд өгөө ерөнхийлөгч Рональд Рейган хэлсэн хойч үеийнхнийг итгэл найдварлан зоригжуулах хүчин болох хэрэгчлээг ханх хаянаа одоо эхлүүлье. Инх тайван шударгасны төлөө хүмүүс өөрсдөө хувь заяг өөрсдөө чөлөөтэй шийдэх дэлхийг байгуулахын төлөө урагшилцгаая хэмээн сүүгээр өндөрлөё. Хайрын ажлаас улбалан монголчуудад ирээдүйн хойч үеийн хүний эрхийг дээдлэн эрхчлээ арчлыг хөгжүүлэх түүнийг бусад нутагтаа дэлгэрүүлэх аянд хайртай хамт ажиллахад дуртай байх болно. Хайрыг баярлалаа.
I will end my speech with a famous quote by President Ronald Reagan. Let us now begin a major effort to secure the best, a crusade for freedom that will engage the faith and fortitude of the next generation. For the sake of peace and justice, let us move toward a world in which all people are at least free to determine their own destiny. And because of IRI's work, we Mongolians look forward to moving forward and engaging the next generation in promoting peace and promoting democratic values and human rights in Mongolia and throughout our region. Thank you, IRI.
Thank you.
Well, thanks to our 2 honorees. Thank all of you for being here tonight. And on the 30th anniversary of IRI, it reminded me while I was standing there of a story about Senator Strom Thurmond, who, as you know, served longer in the United States Senate than any other person. And on his 90th birthday party, he was being celebrated, and a young man came over and said, "Oh, Senator Thurmond, I'm so excited to be here on your 90th birthday." He said, and I believe that I'll be here for your 100th. And Senator Thurmond said, "Well, if you eat healthy food and exercise a lot, you'll probably be able to." So for those of you that are here on our 30th anniversary, if you eat healthy foods and exercise, you'll be here for our 60th anniversary. I want to thank all of you for your support of IRI. Lauren Craner, thank you for your outstanding and wonderful service. Many of you don't know that Lauren Craner's father and I were of the closest and dearest friends in a place long ago and far away, and I'm certainly grateful for everything that you've done. And I know that Rich Williamson's wishes would be for us tonight to pursue the efforts and goals that were envisioned 30 years ago, and is epitomized by the 2 outstanding patriots that we honored here tonight. Thank you. God bless.